Taylor Swift, the billionaire pop star of the highest order, just released this channel's most anticipated Taylor's Version album, 1989. What makes this re-release the most interesting one yet for Taylor Swift is the incredible amount of money that you can spend trying to collect all the collectibles and variants of this new old 1989. There are 18 different variants to collect for this release. 4 color variants official Taylor Swift store vinyls, a 5th Target exclusive vinyl, 4 Taylor Swift store CD variants, 2 standard editions, 3 Target exclusive CD editions, 2 cassette editions, and for the really cultured, a Japanese edition. Within these different versions of 1989, you'll find things like posters, lyric books, and Polaroids. If you're a Swift faithful who's already spent a down payment for a car amounts of money to attend the Eras Tour, all you'll need to do is spend about $400 more to ensure everyone knows you have an incredible amount of expendable income in your life. But this got us at the DMGT thinking, why do we have so many variants? When did the music machine start to make us feel like young Ash Ketchum leaving Pallet Town on his quest to collect them all? Let's find out in this video. Hey, Danny with the DMGT here, your new favorite place for all things music, gaming, and tech. In this video, we're going to be diving into the world of album release variants and tie-ins, and hopefully figure out why the K-pop fandom is so upset that Taylor Swift is beating them at their own album inclusions game. Okay, I might have been a bit overdramatic, the K-pop fandom is not coming for the Swifties. But when Taylor Swift announced 1989, I made a jokey video comparing the OG Pokemon releases to the album CD variants.
Taylor Swift is re-releasing the original Pokemon games.
1989, not Pokemon,
1989, dude. Not Pokemon games. Sorry, she's releasing the Taylor's version of 1989. There's red, blue, yellow, and even the Japanese exclusive green. Still wrong. Sorry, the colors are actually Rose Garden pink, Crystal Skies blue, Sunrise Boulevard yellow, and Aquamarine green. Each of these will have their version exclusive Pokemon.
No Pokemon.
Wrong again, still not Pokemon. But each set will include 5 unique double-sided collectible photo cards. So kind of like booster packs. These are probably going to sell really fast, so make sure you move quickly if you want to catch them all. Collect them all.
Pretty harmless, right? I thought it was fun. Now, if you were to wisely direct your attention to the comments section on Instagram and TikTok, you'll see some K-pop fans claim that this idea of collecting every single variant to get all the special add-ons and inclusions is stolen directly from the world of K-pop. While the world of K-pop is definitely an economy unto itself, let me put my older millennial hat on for a second and let the youths know that we've been chasing the music tie-ins and collectibles and variants since before the internet, and actually before any of us millennials were even born. Let's turn back the clock. In the analog age, record labels would have to ship out vinyl copies of what they wanted radio stations to play as singles for an artist. From the birth of vinyl until nearly 1970, the single was king. In most major vinyl markets, singles and their B-sides vastly outsold full album versions. This made a lot of sense at the time, as cycles of releases were at a much slower pace before the internet. If you look at the most popular artists of the 1950s and the 1960s and their singles and album releases, you'll see very confusing timelines of the journey from releasing a single to releasing an outright album. Because the market was mostly focused on buying up singles as they were released, album sales rarely were financially successful, and to record studios, not really worth the cost. As the age of television started to take a vice grip on culture, music labels started to realize that there was a captive audience waiting to be sold things through those fancy beam to your house moving pictures on your television. All of those singles of artists throughout the year started to be pressed into compilations, then record labels started to release multiple A-side singles at once, and then finally started to drop full albums in tandem with those singles. From there, the true era of the album begins. And like most things in the 1960s, the Beatles were of course involved, taking the idea of an album being a way to deliver music to an album and its packaging being part of the experience of the music itself. Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is often cited as the first record to have extras included in its packaging. This record was the first to have lyrics written in full on the back cover, and it also came with a bonus gift of cardboard cutouts that consisted of a portrait of Sgt Pepper, a fake mustache, 2 sets of sergeant stripes, 2 lapel badges, and a stand-up cutout of the band in their satin uniforms. The goal of these inclusions were to give fans a sense of being parts of the band. For the next decade and change, the upper echelon of artists started to follow suit and release more and more lavish versions of their albums and vinyls. These are all the vinyl records you see on Discog that cost $1 bajillion. The ones that have artist-written notes, photo books, even some releases of albums that had a lock and a key to keep your record safe. But how did we get from there to a Taylor Swift album release that has 18 different versions? If we take a quick detour to look at what other things baby boomers were blowing their money on, you'll notice that, coincidentally, comic and and sports trading cards were on the rise in popularity in the 60s and 70s, and by the mid-80s, the speculator boom had peaked for both, resulting in all-time high resale values for first edition comics and sports cards. Now, overproduction and the general lack of interest from Gen Xers led to the decline of this market in the 90s. But out of those sports trading cards came trading card games like Magic the Gathering and a little worldwide phenomenon known as Pokemon. Are we starting to see the picture come into focus here? In a sort of parallel to that idea of collectibles and value for high-quality editions of original prints, the 90s also saw the popularization of remasters, coined by the Led Zeppelin remasters in 1990. Other artists had re-released their music onto CDs in the mid to late 80s, but it wasn't really called remasters until this Led Zeppelin record. This also happens to coincide with the peak of greatest hits albums to swing back to the compilation of singles on vinyl, which on occasion included previously unreleased tracks, demos, and remixes. To sort of swing back to that Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow parallel, in 2000, the Backstreet Boys collaborated with Burger King with 3 separate editions of For the Fans, a red, blue, and yellow one. These CDs each had different live tracks, demos, and a track from the upcoming Black and Blue album. However, by then, the likes of Napster, LimeWire, and iTunes were taking the music world by storm and forcing it into the digital age. And this type of music collaboration wasn't attempted again, at least not to the same scale.
A quick note from Post, I'm specifically talking about collaborations that included some form of collectible in the 2000s. Obviously, in the last few years, we've seen examples of collaborations with fast food, like with J Balvin, Travis Scott, and Ice Spice.
And yet, by the late 2000s, with Gen Xers and some millennials now being the generation with income, we start to see a slight resurgence of the vinyl formats and trading cards as desired collectible items again. We now reach August 2007, where we trace the first instance of these coveted Photocards in TVXQ's Japanese release of Summer. 3 years later, Girls' Generation also includes Photocards for the Korean release of O, and Photocards with album releases were off to the races in the K-pop fandom. Over the last decade plus of music, a lot of debate has occurred on streaming and the impact to artists, as it's not as profitable as traditional album sales were. Couple that with the worldwide rise in popularity of K-pop and their promotional methods, a lot of artists have turned to bundles like limited edition clothing. Buy a hoodie and get the latest album with it. And yes, K-pop fans, Photocards. That's how we get to 17 different versions of Taylor Swift's 1989. To think that this was going to be a quick video response to let K-pop fans know that K-pop did not invent album collectibles, but then one piece of research led to another, and I went down this weird rabbit hole for album collectibles, so that was very fun, so thank you, K-pop fans. To be clear, this is a very brief and distilled version of the history of album collectibles. This could be 10 one-hour documentaries starting from like the 1920s, but I will include any of the links that I used for research for this video down in the description below. If this is your first time watching a video on my channel, I also do a lot of video game and tech content, so if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing. With the Game Awards coming up, it's going to be very video game heavy in the next couple of weeks, but Spencer and I are going to CES in January as official members of the media, so keep an eye out for content then. Once again, I'm Danny with the DMGT. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.